Hello and welcome back to another episode of FinTech Focus TV with me, Toby Babb. Today I am delighted to bring you a guest who I've been looking to bring onto the show for quite some time now, fully cemented in his role as the CEO of Yolt. It's Nicolas Weng Kan. Nick, how are you doing?
I'm fine, very much. Thank you.
Listen, it's lovely to have you on the show. I've been following Yolt for some time now, right at the core of a market that I'm fascinated by. I think the open banking market's got such potential and we've seen so much innovation and exciting things, particularly over the last couple of years, I think really come through from it. Loads to unpack with you today. We're going to talk through the whole Yolt journey, the evolution of the market, loads and bits and pieces in between. But before we do that, please can you give us a little bit of background about yourself and about Yolt?
Oh, wow. Okay. So my background is I was born and I grew up in Madagascar, which is in Africa. And I went to university in France. After that, I went to work in Asia. So I'm an engineer by training, worked for a Swiss engineering firm between Japan, Taiwan, and China. And after some time, decided that I wanted to come back to Europe. So went back to business school, got an MBA from INSEAD 17, 18 years ago, and joined the Admiral Group in Wales, in Cardiff. And that was my initiation to the financial services regulated industry, and it was fascinating. And a little bit later, I was poached by Google to go and run Google Compare, which is the price comparison arm that Google had in Europe and in the US. We launched the product doing insurance comparison in the UK, but also financial comparisons, so mortgages and credit cards in the US. And I ended up taking another role internally at Google before moving out back to something that is closer to my heart, which was FinTech. I joined a friend. We launched a startup right at the edge of the coronavirus. So I took a company in February 2020.
And timing's perfect, isn't it?
Timing was perfect. Learned a lot about that one because it was a fascinating environment. When you look at that side, we're looking at alternative credit scoring. So what else can be used for the benefit of the customer to derive better rating, either insurance or loans? One of the things that we saw happen at the time was open banking. And I was very, very lucky to get approached by a recruiter who got me into the job of Yolt. And I was fascinated by what was happening in open banking. I was like, oh, we can do all the things I've been dreaming of in the startup around the credit scoring piece. And it's true that open banking opens a raft of information that people can only dream about and help in better decision making. But again, I'm getting ahead of myself. The background of Yolt, it originally started as an internal project at ING, where they were focusing on open banking, or at that time it was not open banking, it was more looking at the directive of that was coming in. And the focus was how can we make sure that we are an interesting competitor in that market. And they launched the Yolt app at the time in the UK, which was a PFM proposition, so a personal finance manager proposition. We learned a lot in that phase because originally you go out to the market, say, download the app, share your credential, your banking credential with us, and people are like, whoa, why should I do that? And before you know it, we answered a lot of those questions about the usage of the data. And basically what we did was just aggregate multiple sides of multiple bank accounts, give you a view of your finance, and people loved it. They absolutely loved it. We ended up over the course of a few years with 1.7 million downloads, lots of information that we could leverage. We trained models, AI models on our side on customer behavior. So we're trying to understand how to help the consumer. Our mission at the time was really, how can we get the customer in a better financial position? So looking at an aggregated view of all your finances, looking at the pattern of what you're spending, where you're spending it, and trying to give you some hints that Yes, you can save money if you switch utilities, you can save money if you switch insurance companies, etc., etc. So try and really get to a better financial position for the customer. And then while we're doing that, we originally used a technology called screen scraping. So we were buying that service from a third-party provider. And screen scraping is basically putting your credential into the website of the bank, extracting that information and presenting it on your mobile phone. But as you can imagine, screen scraping is not the safest way of doing that. And it's also not a very, very stable environment. And what happened is that a few years ago, the European regulator and the FCA both of came up with what we call API connectors. So basically, you have a permitted way that we can connect into the bank where we are verified by the banks themselves, and we extract that information. And we started building connectors in the UK. So we were the first one, Yolt was the first company to build connectors to the CMA9, so the 9th biggest bank in the UK. And we built a lot of experience there. That was in January 2018 when we first connected with Lloyds, HSBC, and all those guys. And then we never stopped after that. We continued building connectors. So we now have hundreds of connectors across Europe. We are probably have the best coverage on our API connectors in France, in the UK, in the Netherlands, and we're rapidly expanding. So we're currently finishing Spain, Italy, and Germany. So we're really wanting to be a pan-European player on those connectors. The story of Yolt is a little bit later than we looked at the metrics, and we realized that probably a faster path of growth for us would be to focus on the B2B side. And that's what we did end of last year. We stopped the app, and it was a very, very difficult decision because we had customers who absolutely loved using the app. And I still meet customers who said, "Oh, why did you stop it?" We're absolutely, it was my go-to piece on understanding my finance. And it's true that I tried downloading some of our competitors and never reproduced the experience that I had with Yolt myself. So I kind of gave up after that. But we've been focusing since the end of last year really on the B2B channel. So for all information and purposes, Yolt is a dual license third-party provider. So it means that we have a license with the FCA to provide AIS and PIS services, and we have a license with the DNB, the Dutch regulator, which is not the easy one to get. And we have passported that license across Europe. So we can operate on a pan-European basis with our 2 licenses.
Which is pretty unique, I think, in the marketplace as well, isn't it?
Yes, I think that a lot of our competitors have one license with the FCA or one with a European regulator, and they passport into the other geography. So you can have, French license and then try to passport into the UK. But we're probably, I think, one of the very, very few that has a dual license across Europe.
I think it's really interesting everything you've said there, and look, there's a lot of I think probably in you mentioned the sort of time beforehand, that sort of March 2020 onwards, so that's the time period we saw a lot of talk about pivoting, and it became one of those sort of dirty words in tech, didn't it? It was something there which people were very proud not to pivot, etc., etc. But I think to me, it had always been that thing of sort of it's evolution of a proposition. I'm really interested about something that was successful and loved there in that B2C world as Yolt was becoming, and then looking at something and making that, as you mentioned yourself, a difficult decision, but also a brave decision to move into that B2B world. Talk to us about the rationale behind that and how it's worked for you.
I think that we had some very, very interesting assets because the background of where we expanded so rapidly across Europe was to follow our owner, ING Group, the bank, the Dutch bank. And they were looking at a service provider across Europe. So we followed them, we built the infrastructure. So as you can imagine, we built a very, very solid and huge infrastructure to follow a tier 1 bank across Europe. So we probably, if you compare us to other third-party provider, in terms of compliance and in terms of quality of our service, we think that we are at the top of the pile, if I may say so. And the reasoning here is that if a top tier one bank needs this kind of service, what else can we do? But we don't stop ourselves into thinking we're going to provide just AIS and PIS services, because I believe that in the future, AIS, so for those of you who do not understand, AIS is account aggregation services. So basically you connect into a bank account and you get the data from that bank account. I believe that that will become more commoditized in the future. It's just a question of you invest enough money into it, you build a connector and you have access to that AIS. PIS is a little bit is also in the same vein. You put money in there and you get PIS and you get you'll be able to make those transactions. I think that what we have learned through the app is we have a lot of information on which to train our model. So we always talk about model, and the AI is the buzzword these days. In fact, you need, I know we spend a lot of money on our data science team. We have done a lot around categorization. So basically we train model on recognizing what expense you're seeing, where is it going, what kind of category. So hairdresser, groceries, and all sorts of things. And one of the advantage we had with the app is that people were manually correcting that categorization also. So when we said this is something and they said, no, this was something else. And our model in that instance become better because of the input from the consumer. So on that side, we believe that our models are much, much better than what is available because of our background. And the other side that we did also, and I remember that part that said about utility. So helping people realize that they're paying too much for a certain type of product, is we trained our models on recognizing patterns of spend. So seeing that, you're paying $34.99 for your broadband every month makes us analyze it and say, oh, okay, you're with BT. Is there a better deal for you when the time comes through? So we've built all sorts of models around recurring patterns of payment. So in a way, we have a very, very powerful tool at our disposal. And that's also the branching out that we've been doing. So we looked at it from the perspective of the B2B and said how some of these things that we have developed in the app could be applied to the B2B. One of the first application is something we call the cash flow analyzer. So this idea was developed in conjunction with a company called Graydon we worked very closely with Graydon to develop this product. Graydon is a credit rating agency. And what they're looking at is when people make a leasing decision. So say, for example, you're a flower shop around the corner and you need a white van for deliveries. Now, the flower shop might have been in operation a year, and in which case, the traditional leasing decision of, oh, let's look at your financial reports is not there. But that doesn't mean that the flower shop is not viable. And what we've developed with in this instance is to say, hey, we don't have information on you. Why don't you share access to your banking data? Not the raw banking data will be passed over. What we do as Yolt is we work very closely with our partners. What we do is we extract that information, we aggregate that information. So we say, hey, on average, we're seeing 50 transactions per month. We're seeing that the average income is 72 per transaction. And then what we do is we're seeing outgoing of, and we're seeing X days on which, they go into the red. So structure the information, not the raw data, into different classifier that we then feed back into the model of people who are making the decision and say, actually, this is worth a loan or this is worth a lease. So it's very powerful information, especially now in an environment where the world is getting disrupted with Corona, with the war. What is the most up-to-date information I can get access to make a credit decision? And I think that is one of the elements of where we're going with this.
Which makes it so interesting, isn't it? And I find it really interesting that ING I've always respected as one of the sort of most innovative of the institutional banks, and they've I think in my mind always had a sort of eye and a finger on the pulse about where is innovation in the sector, where can technology transform finance. and their input as must have been really interesting to for you to do that, but also great validation for you. This is a world where I guess the concern is always based around compliance and use cases, etc. And right from the very start, you had a great use case with a with a major institution who've not only liked the product but basically built it, invested into it, and gone through there as well. Look, I know compliance is something that you've invested heavily into. You mentioned data as well as something you've invested heavily into. It's a good start. It's a good foundation block for you guys to be building on, isn't it?
Yeah, I think so. Let me make it clear that even though we're at the moment we're fully owned by ING, there is actually real separation between the data that we own and the data that ING has access to, and nowhere are the two being mixed. Now, one of the big advantages of working with ING is ING has a very, very strong compliance department, and to qualify as a supplier for ING, we have to be again at the top of the game. So we have on our side a very, very strong compliance team that know how to navigate the requirement of a big bank looking to work with a fintech provider. In fact, a lot of our people are ex-ING people who moved into the Yolt side, so they have both sides of the business. But clearly, we know very well what we're doing in terms of compliance. And we're working very, very closely with the different regulator also, because we see that as one of the critical advantage that we have. Our background of being owned by ING helped us in that direction.
That's exciting, that, isn't it? You will have to, if you're out at Money 2020, you have to introduce yourself to Nadia Edwards-Dashti, our Chief Customer Officer, who's moderating panels out there as well during that day. So it's exciting to hear that. I'm looking forward to finding out a little bit more about all of that as well. So coming back to I guess the evolution and everything you've been doing, you've mentioned a few times now that this is a smaller business competing in a field where there's plenty of players in that space and some big players in it all. But you mentioned on more than one occasion now critical advantages, which I love. I love that sort of innovation that allows people to compete and to add more value and to really sort of push that further forward. That pan-European access, which you talk about, the compliance aspect of having the links to ING there, having the dual license of the UK and the Netherlands. There's loads and loads of different things there that allow that to happen. Talk to me about that, because this is an interesting time to be in this space, and to me it's a sort of the next couple of years that look really, really exciting for open banking, full stop. I know we've had a lot of clamour around it. It's been the sort of mot du jour for the last couple of years. But my inclination is we're going to see a lot more evolution in the space. We're going to see a lot more advantages that are coming out of there. I know you've already spoken to me about the sort of cost reduction element of direct debits and such like. Tell me what the future looks like and how Yolt becomes a significant player in this marketplace, because I know growth's on the agenda for you guys in a fairly significant way too, right?
I think that we first on our side need to get the basics right, and the basics mean a very good coverage across Europe. So we have the basics right in a few countries already, like I mentioned before, United Kingdom, France, Benelux. We're very, very strong there. We probably have the best panel of all the banks in those countries, and we're expanding rapidly. So we're in the process of finishing in Spain. I believe by end of this quarter, we'll be fully represented in Spain, and Italy will come a month or two behind, and then we're expanding rapidly also into Germany. And the beauty of what we're doing here is this is one block of technology. So by that, I mean, you don't need to do one integration in Spain and one integration in France. If you're working with Yolt, you do one integration with us, and then we open the different geographies that you need for your integration. So that's one of the big advantage of what we're doing. The second thing is that we believe that we've built a factory of connectors. So if you want to expand into more countries that are GDP, that are open banking PSD2 compliant, it's easy for us to do. So if you say add Portugal, add Romania, in fact, Romania is already on the pipeline, and I believe that we've done most of Ireland also. So it's very easy for us to scale up those things. But like I said, these are the basics. AIS and PIS, as long as you pour money into it, you get there. What we've been doing over the last 6 months is hire a new senior management team with a longer term vision of where this is all going. So have a new chief commercial officer that has been a breath of fresh air in transforming our business. We have a new customer marketing officer, we have a new chief product officer, and all these things suddenly crystallize around a vision that, yes, the next big thing that will happen will be around payments. And we're ramping up our path into payment with variable recurring payment, but also what we call smart payment, presenting the payment at the right time for the right people. I mentioned before direct debit. Direct debit works amazingly well at a very low cost when it works. But from the moment you have a default, then we get into all sorts of pains and costs. And those costs can escalate quickly into an ugly debt collector scenario where, hey, you haven't paid the premium of your insurance. We sold your debt to a debt collector. Wow, okay. And then the debt collector put charges on it. And suddenly we are in a very, very bad situation. What we're looking for in terms of payment is to say, hey, with the combination of AIS and PIS, yes, that payment defaulted. Instead of doing direct debit, let's send you a QR link that will enable us to have a look at different information. When should we be taking the payment? What can you afford at this stage? And then maybe cut the debt escalation level and make it a more human process. And also maybe in a way, a more automated, rather than the person chasing you in an ugly manner. We send you a link, we'll look at what is available and say, okay, we see that, you have £52, we can collect 26 this month and then maybe 26 in 2 weeks, cutting the debt, reducing the cycle in which, payments default. So that's some of the things that we're working on and developing with partners. We're also looking at the rails of open banking and say, oh my God, this is amazing. This is such an easy way to make a payment. And when we talk about that, we are at the basis of it a Dutch company. Yolt is fundamentally based in Amsterdam, and the Dutch have something called IDO, and the Dutch are so used to making payment by bank transfer that they don't think there is a different world outside. And we say, no, you are unique in that sense that you're making those bank transfer payments, but outside in other geographies, people don't have access to that. And payment with bank transfer comes at a very, very low cost. In fact, we're working with some networks to provide these payments to merchants and reduce the cost of payment. We talked a few months ago to some big player in the transport industry, and they said up to 20% of their costs are going into banking fees.
Is that right?
Like, yeah. So they're like,
that's
we're
incredible.
having 1 million transactions per day, millions of transactions, and 20% of that is going into banking fees. And what they were looking for is how can they apply open banking to those rails. So imagine you go to the tube and you tap your card, or you have a QR code. There's some mechanism that leverage open banking instead of the traditional payment rails. And suddenly the cost for the tube and some other transportation company got reduced massively. So it's making it easy, and at the same time reducing costs is what we're looking after with payment at this stage. And those partnerships that we're developing hopefully will put us on a good footing. It's not going to transform the industry overnight, but I think that this is very promising. When you have 20% of your costs going into payments, then you're like, well, 20% of the money you collected going into payments, you're like, every reduction would be welcome. You would like more buses, for example. Instead of, if you're spending 5%, then you can have how many more buses, how many more trains can you have for the same amount of money that you're collecting?
Yeah, this is fascinating for me, isn't it? Because there's so many different pressures and a sort of never-ending cost squeeze in terms of how people are set to make profit as inflation rises, as everything else within it. That sort of focus that you've got to be able to sort of take out what is nothing other than really annoying cost into a business and provide that sort of value is something that's really, really special. And I know that something that's fueled a lot of this for you is technology. I know you're a sort of very innovative business. I know you think a lot. I know you're very proud of the sort of tech that you've got that again allows you to play up, with the bigger players, within the market due to the quality of your tech and your innovation. Tell us a little bit about your thoughts around that, about how you can help, I love the fact you said that this isn't about an overnight click of a fingers, and people I think are looking for that golden bullet that changes the industry overnight, don't you? But I love this sort of revolutionary evolutionary sort of element to it, as opposed to revolutionary. And it seems to me that that's something, through good tech, through good business planning, through listening to your customers, through thinking about the problems out there in the marketplace and looking to provide real solutions to it through the sort of wealth of opportunity that open banking shines into the sector. It all sounds pretty exciting to me, Nick.
It is. I mean, I'm fascinated by open banking, like I said before, but I see these kind of things applicable on so many opportunities. We talked a little bit about loan and making sure that, you have access to loan. Some other studies that we've seen, some people that we've seen talked to in the industry said that for the same level of risk, you can accept twice the number of people that you're accepting now. Or if you only, so you say, I have a certain loss ratio that I'm willing to accept, then open banking would make sure that, will probably give you an acceptance rate that is double what you have. Or if you're keeping the acceptance ratio at the same level, then you can reduce your exposure by up to 80% in some cases. So it's a really, really powerful to have up-to-date information. And then you can also think of it as people who should not have had a loan getting a loan. Well, this would be a decision point. But the other fascinating point is to say you have the technology applied at point of sale. And that's why you have so many people looking at BNPL. And if you look at it, open banking is one of the elements of BNPL, buy now, pay later, to say we should check the affordability of what is happening here. It has to happen in real time. So we're talking microseconds for a decision. So us being able to hit the bank account, bring back the information into the decision engine, this has to happen on the snap of a finger. And this is what we pride ourselves in doing, to say our systems are good enough to get that information back in a GIF and then get you into what is important for your business, which is making a decision. So technology combined with speed, with decision engine, and applying more data points for decision is really where I see this transformation happening. But the other side of things is, like I said before, it's very nice to give a loan, but also monitor it. You have a duty as a company that loan money to make sure that you're not putting the person you loaned it or the company you loaned it into a difficult position. Definitely. And this is where, monitoring the evolution of the account is critical. I think it's not only the tech side, the regulator has a role to play, and I'm very happy to see some of the progress that have been made. Previously, we had a reconsent every 3 months. Now the regulators are moving to 6 months to 1 year. So after 6 months, they say, hey, you're still sharing data with X. Are you willing to do that? And you say, yes, I'm happy to do that, and all fine. Or you say no, and that's perfectly fine, because maybe you don't want to share that information. But making it easier and with less revalidation, as long as it fulfills a purpose, a legitimate business purpose, makes a lot of sense to me.
Likewise, yeah, I think it's really interesting. And I'm also sort of fascinated. I'm going to sort of, I realise the sands of time are moving very quickly through this conversation. And it's one which I told you we could be talking about for days on end. But I want to just sort of focus in on your background. I mean, it's a fascinating career, isn't it? From the MBA and everything before that, to then shifting over to Admiral and sort of taking the reins at confused.com and everything like that, and then moving into Google. Those last two sort of roles, and particularly at Google, moving into a giant like that, and then coming into something here which is far more on that evolutionary scale. How's that been for you? How's that transition been for you? Because what I say about this and why I say it is I love speaking to people on this show who are genuinely excited and passionate about the product, about the opportunity, about the market and the technology they're talking to. And it's come out all the way through this conversation. I'm speaking to someone very, very clearly who's excited about what they're doing. And I love, I think I wish that there were more people who sort of come out of that sort of, the FANGs type companies or the larger institutions and take all of that sort of knowledge which they've gained into these sort of environments and make a difference. That to me seems very something that you're really thriving in at the moment.
I think, Google is an amazing company. There's no two ways about that. It's a company where things are getting done, things are moving fast, and it's a superb environment. But on the other side, I miss owning a business. I miss running my own team with my own ideas. And this is what I'm getting here with Yolt. I hired the people that I mentioned before are all people that I've met through my life in different experiences, and I'm coalescing a team that I believe is strong, that I know can do the job, have similar views to mine. We're all excited about transforming an industry, and then this is something we can execute. We have, of course, to explain to investors. At the moment it's ING, maybe in the future is somebody else, what we're doing, but the prospects are magnificent. We can reinvent a whole industry. The whole payment industry is going to be transformed by what is happening in open banking. The whole credit rating industry is going to be transformed by AIS information systems. So a lot of things are going to be changed in the future by the amount of information that is coming in. And we've seen some of these FANGs realizing that this is a transformational business. The acquisition of Credit Kudos by Apple shows that they understand the value of open banking and the potential that open banking has. And I'm not giving up on the fact that maybe another FANG would buy us in the future, looking at what we have.
Full circle.
And we say, oh, we've been there, we know that, we know how it works. But no, I think, before getting bought by anybody else, I want to leave a mark on the industry to say we led that revolution, we led the change, and we executed superbly. I think there's a lot of pride and a lot of achievement in transforming something that was working into something that is more efficient. You talked about it, taking some of the cost that should not be there and making things, like you said, we're facing inflation at the moment. We're facing a very, very difficult situation. Anything that we can do to reduce those costs and put companies or people in a better position, I'm all for it.
Yeah, so, that's the beauty of it, right? It's something there which is just a great business opportunity, but it's a great social opportunity at the same sort of time, and it puts people, as you rightly say, in the best possible spot. Again, this feels like it should be a 2-hour special, but I'm gonna try and tie things up at the moment, Nick, because there's so much I could go into. But tell me a little bit about what we can expect to hear and see from Yolt over the next next 6 months towards the end of the year, and tell me who should be talking to you right now.
What is going to happen in the next few months? We're going to make commercial announcement at Money20, where we're working on some partnerships that we're putting in place. I think some of those partnerships are pretty revolutionary. So if you want to know more about this, please feel free to reach out to myself or to our head of commercial, François Gutierrez, who's based in Paris. He'll be also at Money 2020. What we're hoping to achieve by the end of the year is, of course, all these announcements have to be executed, and my team will be very, very busy working on delivering all those deals that we're signing or putting in place and making sure that we are true to our words. These are difficult deals. We see some of our competitors being financed to a huge amount of money to make it happen. And we're leveraging a few brain cells from different people around the room with us, and also, part of the relationships that we've built over the years to design something that is different, but fast and effective and can do the same job. So we're exchanging our brain cells for money. So we're very excited that we can outsmart our competition and without having to spend a huge amount of money that they're spending.
Well, that's do you know what? That's music to my ears, that, because I think when you see, I've got a lot of thoughts about sort of spend and people throwing money at things and where institutional cash has been put over recent years, and I love when it actually boils down to better productivity, better ideas, better people, efficiency, all of those different things gives me a lot more confidence about where a company goes than something that's just had a whole load of cash thrown at it and hoping to find a solution into it. So. I'm all team Yolt. So speaking of which, how should people get in touch with you, Nick?
I'm on LinkedIn, so Nicolas Weng Kan on LinkedIn, CEO of Yolt, and then reach out to me, and then I'll redirect you to the right people in the organization. But yeah, reach out to me on LinkedIn.
Nick, it's been an absolute pleasure. Please do reach out to him. It's a great company doing amazing things. Loved having you on the show. Thanks so much for joining us. We'll do it again sometime soon, I hope.
It was a pleasure. Like you said, you told me it was going to be half an hour. I didn't see it go by. It was a pleasure to talk about something I'm really passionate about.
That screams off the screen. I can tell that for sure. Listen, it's lovely talking to you. Good luck at Money 2020. I hope it goes great. Good luck for the rest of the year. I'm sure it will go great. And thank you all for watching. We'll see you soon on another episode of FinTech Focus TV. Thanks a lot.